Well, shalomi, homies. How are you doing today? Hey, listen, I had a quick minute. I wanted to just get out here and spend some time in the Word with y'all, because you know what? The days are spicy, are they not? I've had a terrific time lately, getting opportunities to just spend some time on the phone with different people that are out there. And let me tell you, y'all, the pulse of the world is pretty rough. It's pretty rough. And it seems to be that there is a absolute onslaught in a huge amount of the people's lives, at least the people I know. Maybe you guys have people in your life that you know are going through some serious suck, you know, terrible stuff that's taking place in their lives. But whenever this goes on, you know, I just want to take time, be thankful for the wonderful brothers and sisters that we do have. Some of you are out there dealing with a lot of loneliness and seriously, like seasons of just unbelievable persecution and pressure and oppression and demonic stuff. Man, listen, the amount of torment that some people live with on a regular basis, whether it's night paralysis, whether it's just torment in their sleep, in their dreams, and with witchcraft being sent their way. It's awful when you're living through it and you're stuck inside that. And those of you who have no experience or no real understanding of what it is I'm talking about, hey, rejoice that your life is a little more simple and you're not having to deal with that. But you know what? There is this like constant onslaught that's being waged over the minds and the souls of mankind. And right now there's this like crucible of pressure that's being put upon people to have this fear, anxiety, this trepidation about what our future holds and like what tomorrow's going to bring or what next month's going to bring and the results of all these things. Listen, as much as that turpidity and all of that like torment is being waged up against people, I just want to take a minute. Hey, let's settle our minds, settle our hearts on understanding that these things have been talked about for a long time. The experiences that we're suffering today are not uncommon to what things that have others have gone through in days beforehand. And though the pressures and the trials are like unrelenting, it's also because we have a very altered time frame of reality. We are being given news and information on a scale and on a rapidity that's just never been reality. You know, if just as awkward as it is, if you go back in your mind 10, 15 years, understand the pace at which news and information was disseminated out to us was so different, was so vastly different. You know, we went down to this area, you know, in Swannanoa, which was devastated by the hurricane, you know, and seeing just the realities of people's lives who their everything was swept away, and they're living and occupying a space, you know, in pop-up tents, pop-up campers. They're living under little canopies and tents. The pace that their life now exists at is so drastically different. For weeks, people were without communications of any kind. They said the only way that like news got around to them was by word of mouth. Like literally people coming up to each other and talking to each other. And it changed the pace at which information was given to people. And understand, our bodies over time, that was the pace at which we received information. It's so different to have the constant stream, the endless scrolling that alters us. It changes us. It changes even for myself. When I take a while, like I got obviously a big crunching strike on my channel. And so because of that, you can't do posts and you can't do any of that kind of stuff. And so it changed a lot of what I was doing. And a lot of that meant I was no longer on technology. And it's wild how much time slows down when you're separated from that. And you spend a lot more time in the analog world. You know what I'm saying? Like just talking to people on the phone or just reading the scriptures, reading books, like totally different, the pace that it produces and the fruit of what comes out of your life. So I want to just give a strong, hey, something to consider. Something to consider. If your life is feeling like that rapidity and that onslaught, listen, if it's really important, there's nothing in this world that the news-wise can't get to you sooner or later. Some of you guys are like, it's hard to not resist looking at everything. Just take a little pause in it. Trust me, it'll be better for you if you take a little break in it. Those of you guys that are doing the video game life and the TV shows and all that stuff, I understand. But listen, your life is such a different level of reflection and introspection when you can slow down and take a break for the word. I'm obviously biased on this. I know some of you guys aren't even about this at all, but understand something. There's a reason I have a zealousness and a hope, and I have courage amidst unbelievable calamity. Like I'm facing this season, growing up in my life, it was one of the most terrifying, haunting, tormenting seasons to go into. But I have a different peace of mind in my life now. And that came because of so much of the identity that was restored to me, an understanding of who I was and whose I was. And you know what? I want to go to you guys to 1 John. Hey, bro, there's been some savage people reciting scriptures, sending me videos of them reciting a chapter of the scriptures, and they're getting knives, you know? Like, I'm sharpening up blades to be savage, scary sharp, to send them out to children right now, young men, young women, amazing folks. Any of you of any age can get in on the action, you know what I'm saying? There's some, like, ridiculous homies out there who are hunting blades to send my way so I can send them out to others. I put a ridiculous edge on them and then send them out, you know? I'm just saying, there's obviously good rewards for sharpening your sword of the Spirit. This is a weapon of warfare, and you should understand the beauty of a very sharp knife. I'm shockingly biased towards that, but 1 John, Yochanan. You ever heard that? Yeah. See, what kind of got my gears cranking on this was in Peter. There's this chapter that says, you know, check this out. I'll just skip over to 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 3. You're going to go down to verse 8. To sum up, let all of you be like-minded, sympathetic, loving as brothers, tender-hearted, humble-minded, not returning evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you were called to this in order to inherit a blessing. For he who wishes to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it, because the eyes of Yahuwah are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayers. But the face of Yahuwah is against those who do evil. And who is the one doing evil to you, if you become imitators of the good? But even if you suffer for righteousness' sake, you are blessed. And do not fear their threats, neither be troubled. This comes from, let's see, Isaiah 8:2. There's a little like annotation here that comes from Isaiah 8. And I've been spending a lot of time in Isaiah lately. I read Isaiah 53 and 54 this morning. And what just a renouncing proclamation of glory from the Father about the promises of his Son and the one who would come to deliver us. Is that chapter 8? 8 verse 12. For Yahweh spoke thus to me with a strong hand and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people, saying, do not say a conspiracy concerning all that this people call a conspiracy, nor be afraid of their threats, nor be troubled. For Yahweh of hosts, him you shall set apart. Let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. And he shall be for a set-apart place, but a stone of stumbling and a rock that makes for falling to both the houses of Yisrael, and a snare and a trap to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Do you understand that? He's literally sitting here. For those of you guys, I know I spend a lot of time in the conspiracy land. You know what I'm saying? I like lived a full-fledged conspiratorial life in my days, you know? But he literally is sitting here trying to warn them to not let those conspiracies, not let the fear of what's going to happen, that dread to be on us. We were warned very diligently many times to not be afraid of man, nor what they have in store for us. But it's easy to get caught in that, especially when understand, like there's this idea that they say if it bleeds, it leads in the media. And that it's much more intoxicating to give people a slightly frustrating piece of news on a regular basis. People are, for instance, they did a lot of psychological testing to try to figure out what people really want, you know? And one of those things they literally tried out was hardwiring people's brains, okay? And they found specific areas during, like, neuromapping, right? Mapping out the different neuron centers of the brain. What did they do? What was their function? As they were doing some of these experiments, they figured out, okay, we think some of these areas are really associated with pleasure, okay? People really feel good. When they're happy and they're feeling really good and really pleasured, this area of the brain lights up. So therefore, we kind of think, you know, there's a correlation that maybe this is the area that is concentrating, sending out those pleasure signals in the body. So they hardwired into someone's brain a literal electrode so that when they pushed a button, it activated that area and would release pleasure hormones. It would release this feeling of pleasure, that they would feel good. And then they found the areas that's activated with aggression. All right. And this was not a single instance study. This is something they've been able to replicate lots of times in different kinds of cultures as well. Whereas when they ran that electrode to the area that stimulated aggression or frustration, people were more inclined to activate that area of their brain. Aggression, frustration, a little bit of frustration. They liked that more than they liked the pleasure long term. One of those little areas. So because of that, people with this whole mindset of profiteering, in a sense, have weaponized forms of media, weaponized forms of information gathering and collection and dissemination to include a high dose. There's like the good, feel-good stuff you see on your videos that you're like, oh yeah, that's fun, I like that, like victory and success. Then there's like the onslaught of all of the other vein of just stuff that's going to frustrate you and tick you off and just make you want to throw a rock at the world. That stuff wears on you. And understand it inclines your mind to see and perceive neighbors, people, other people, as the source of so much of this dread and this torment and this anguish and this bad things coming. But if you saturate yourself in it, it wears on you to such a degree that you become malaise. You get like, you lose hope. You lose a lot of that courage and that conviction. And that's why there's this efficacy of coming down, washing yourself in the water of the word so that you can put your mind to ease and restore in you what was supposed to be there, which is a fear of Yahuwah, fear of our Creator, the one who made us and called us with a purpose, to have meaning in our life, to have a job to do, you know. And for those of you that have never wrestled with a lot of this, I just encourage you, consider it strongly. There is literally transformative power in these words. There's the stuff that can pull you out of the ditches. You know, like I'm on phone calls with people and I get to experience the power of authority of commanding unclean spirits off of people. And that's not anything to do with me, but that has everything to do with the one I call upon, who's got the authority. All authority in heaven and earth was given to him. God, go to Colossians. Go to Colossians. It's savage. Go to Colossians. This is good stuff, y'all. This is good, like, fundamentals of understanding. Like, sometimes your brother's going to be stuck in a pit, you guys. Sometimes people are going to call you or reach out to you in their life because they're being tormented by sleep paralysis. And they have no idea what to do. And they, like, anytime they ever went to church, it may have gone to church a lot in their life. Maybe they never been. But a lot of times people have never heard that there is authority that's given to them according to the power of the Messiah, the blood of the Lamb, that allows them to command these spirits off of them. It's not always schizophrenia, you know, like major misconception about what are the root causes of a lot of these diseases or these mental bondages that people are stuck in. But sleep paralysis is a big one that people get trapped in, and it's a horrifying experience. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, let me slow down. Sleep paralysis is an experience that people have where when they're laying down to sleep, either as they're falling asleep or while they're asleep, they wake up with a felt presence, like an overwhelming presence of something else in the room or on them or pressing on them and making it unable for them to move at all. Like they're fully paralyzed. Their body's paralyzed, or they can't cry out. They can't get away. It's like a feeling of intense dread and terror that's just gripping them. Nightmares is another kind of vein of that, where people believe that literally like demonic spirits would ride on the chests of people. These are like things that are tormenting them in their sleep. We have this recipe for one of those things to handle that. In Psalm 91, when we read it in English, we don't recognize or understand some of the aspects of these different principalities, these different spirits, these different entities that were described as Yahuwah having power and dominion and authority over them. I'm going to read this to you first. He who dwells in the secret... Memorize this, you guys. I'll send you a knife. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High, who abides under the shadow of the Almighty. He is saying of Yahuwah, my refuge and my stronghold, my Elohim in whom I trust. For he delivers you from the snare of a trapper, from the destructive pestilence. He covers you with his pinion, and under his wings you take refuge. His truth is a shield and armor. You are not afraid of the dread by night, or of the arrow that flies by day. These are those entities literally being knocked down. Nor the pestilence that walks in darkness, or the destruction that ravages at midday. 1,000 fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it does not come near you. Only with your eyes you look on and see the reward of the wrong ones. Because you have made Yahuwah my refuge, the Most High, your dwelling place. No evil befalls you, and a plague does not come near your tent. For he commands his messengers concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They bear you up in their hands, lest you dash your feet against a stone. You tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you trample underfoot. Because he cleaves to me in love, therefore I deliver him. I set him on high, because he has known my name. When he calls on me, I answer him. I am with him in distress. I deliver him and esteem him. With long life I satisfy him and show him my deliverance. When it's talking about the dread of the night, the terror of the night, this was literally the connotation of this night terror, Lilith, this entity that would come and steal babies out of their sleep. We would have a lot of descriptions towards sudden infant death syndrome for why babies just suddenly die. There's all kinds of other variables of reasons that go into that I can't get into here because, censorship is real. That being said, there's physical, spiritual connections that are going on that are beyond most of our pale of understanding, and many of us were never given a real chance to even know what was really taking place. But there's this veil that's just beyond our perception, where so much of this darkness can be felt and experienced. And there's people who live under this persecution, being tormented in anguish of soul, and they are afflicted, and they do not know who to turn to. They do not know what to turn to. And they will go ask anybody for help because that level of desperation increases. Any of you who are fathers or mothers who have children being tormented by this stuff, you understand that absolute desperation that gets you when you see your child suffering and you want to do anything to help them, to stop that. This position that we are supposed to be in as people who understand the word, people that are, whether you're beginning to even consider the scriptures for the first time in your life or not, understand part of the reason where I have such an allegiance and such a zealous love for it is because I've seen demonstrations of power come through the word. I've seen demonstrations of authority that superseded powers and forces that were far beyond anything this world could imagine. I've seen it effectively drive away fear, anxiety, depression, sorrow, bitterness, unforgiveness, hatred, envy. I've seen it provide restoration to people whose lives were ruined. This is the source from where that comes from. Listen, the reason we have that authority is because he was given that authority. Yeshua, our Messiah, Jesus the Christ. We were given that authority when he took captivity captive, right? He took the keys of death from the devil who had him. So up until that point in time, the devil had at his control, under his dominion, death. He was able to rule and reign and administer death under his dominion, under his power. But when Yeshua conquered death, he stripped those powers from his hands. He was given those powers and got the ability to command and control this entire other hierarchy that otherwise was left to its own devices, ultimately subjected to Yahuwah. But now Yeshua was taking that authority captive, and then he gave that unto us. He dispenses that unto us, those who would be his bondservants, his ambassadors on this earth. You go to Colossians chapter 2. Right, those are my guardians, by the way. You hear those beauties? Those are our crows, and they protect this property from hawks. It's savage. Make friends with crows. They're great. We have a good partnership out here. We have not lost a single bird to hawks, even though we have them around here like crazy. Something to consider. For I wish you to know what a great struggle I have for you and those in Laodicea, and for as many as have not seen my face in the flesh, in order that their hearts might be encouraged, being knit together in love, and to all riches of the entire confirmation of understanding, to a true knowledge of the secret of Elohim, and of the Father, and of the Messiah, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. And this I say, so that no one deceives you with enticing words. Can we just pause for a second? It literally just says, in whom, Yeshua, in him are hidden all treasures, the secret of Elohim, and of the Father, and of the Messiah, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Those of you that are seeking wisdom, those of you that are seeking knowledge, understand there is this fountainhead. Just listen. Continually running, like a fountain that gushs forth from his throne all the time. And it's wisdom, and it's knowledge, it's understanding. It's the strength that you need. Like there is this boundless living waters that's waiting, that will never run dry, for those that ask it and come and seek it. Literally, like in John 4, Yeshua's like going to the well to get some water, and this lady's like, what are you doing here? Why are you talking to me? He's like, you don't even have a bucket or anything to get water out of here. And he's like, if you would have asked of me water, I'd have given you water that you would have drinking of and never thirsted again. And she's like, oh, what? that concept of understanding is much different for our lives because we get water out of a tap and we don't really much think about that. But when you have to draw water from a distant place, you get all this time of contemplation. Every single time you just want to go get water. You need water to do anything. All of that constant commuting, there's a lot of reflection time. And that woman was primed for an understanding of an encounter with the Messiah where she had to wrestle with that. Because that was her whole life revolved around that moment, that set of chores. And here he is sitting here describing to her an ability to change her life forever. And just that single paradigm shift was enough for her to understand who this was, the master. This was the Messiah. She was the first, that Samaritan woman was the first person the Messiah revealed himself to as the son of Elohim, as the prophesied one who was going to come. Like in Deuteronomy, when Moses is telling them, hey, listen, there's a prophet who's going to come after me, whose voice you need to hear and obey. Like, don't disobey him. Hearken unto him. That she understood that's who he was talking. She was literally talking to him. But otherwise, his identity of who he really was veiled to those that were of the house of Israel, the sons of Judah. Those were veiled, the Yahudim. It was veiled unto them. But it was able to be received by her because she also had an understanding of her brokenness. She had humility in her life. And those that are suffering with this affliction, suffering with this torment, they are willing to think about these things and consider stuff about the scriptures and about their life and about spiritual realities that they've never considered when they're in the gutter. And so understand, when we look into days ahead, when we foresee that, hey, there could be trouble and calamity coming our way, when we shift our perspective from looking at it as the dread and understanding hearts will be failing people for fear of looking after these things. But you know what? We have in us, if we have the abounding works of righteousness, our heart will be full. Our heart will be full of compassion. It'll be full of courage. We'll be full of wisdom and knowledge and understanding. And we can impart to others and help them in this time. You know who has been some of the most effective people out here on the front lines rebuilding communities that are devastated? Are believers. There's all these tiny little churches who are organizing and distributing it out and are trusted to be distributing this out. You know, it's easy to look on the mainstream media and perceive that churches are hated and Christians and believers and followers of the way and are persecuted and mocked and belittled. But understand, when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of when people's lives fall apart, where do people know there is safety? Where do they know there is refuge? They know it's in people that still have morality, people who have integrity. I understand there's a vast majority of corruption inside so much of the church, but there are many people who are seeking to live moral lives, ethical lives, righteous lives, who can be depended on because they have integrity, meaning they are willing to do what they say they will do when they say they'll do it consistently. People that can be relied upon and trusted when somebody hands them a donation and be like, listen, please get this into the hands of those who have need. They're trustworthy. That's the good fruit that's hanging on the tree. But that's also because those individuals have been transformed. They're no longer the same person they once were. They have been changed. When we get changed, those waters, those fountainheads of living water, they flow from us. And you know what? It parches the ground. It takes that dusty ground and it waters it. And it revives out of this desert of people's hope and that's been dying. It gives them hope again. It restores to them the things that they're needing in their life. So understand this, the weapon that we have is so capable of effectively fighting, effectively building, of effectively tearing down. Like, this is such a multifaceted tool. And when wielded properly, it changes the world. Like it describes in Hebrews, it describes them as turning the world upside down. And the book of Acts, it describes them literally turning the world upside down. Understand, just let me get on. I'm going to get going on. Let me get my preach on for a second, y'all. I just had a crazy good phone call, man. And I got to pray with another brother. And I'm grateful for that. I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to even pray with other brothers. It's a miracle to get to do that and to understand how much of a difference we can make by just having a phone call. And some of you are in the position of people's lives right now that just need a phone call from you. They just need to have a phone call from you and for you to hear them and be able to bless them with your voice and with understanding and compassion in your time. Because these smartphones and these devices are stealing our time like crazy every second of the day. But understand how much more you can get if you're willing to surrender it for a bit. Something to consider. And this I say, so we're going to carry on in chapter 2, verse 4. That no one deceives you with enticing words. For though I am absent in the flesh, yet I am with you in spirit, rejoicing to see your good order and the steadfastness of your belief in Messiah. Therefore, as you accepted Messiah, Yeshua the Master, Walk in him, having been rooted and built up in him and established in the belief as you were taught, overflowing in it with thanksgiving. See to it that no one makes a prey of you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary matters of the world, and not according to the Messiah, because in him dwells all the completeness of Elohimness bodily. You have been made complete in him, who is the head of all principality and authority, in him you were also circumcised with the circumcision not made with hands, in the putting off of the body of the sins of the flesh by the circumcision of Messiah, having been buried with him in immersion, in which you also were raised with him through the belief in the working of Elohim, who raised him from the dead. And you, being dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, he has made alive together with him, having forgiven all trespasses, having blotted out that which was written by hand against us, by the dogmas which stood against us. And he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the stake. Having stripped the principalities and the authorities, he made a public display of them, having prevailed over them in it. Now listen, having stripped them of having stripped the principalities and the authorities, he made a public display of them, having prevailed over them in it. How powerful of a visual this is. For those of you that have never been in ranks of the military, you got literal rankings that are placed on your collars or on your shoulders, right? On your arms. This stripping off would happen when a conquering army would come in and capture the officers, the leaders, the generals of that army. There would be what's called a triumph, like in this time frame in life, where they would parade around the captives, the prisoners, and all of the goods, the booty that they took with them, all of the stuff that they got as a course of winning the battle. And there'd be this huge celebration. But then there would be this degradation to their enemy, where their officers would be stripped of their authority. They would literally take these garments off that gave them their authority, their colonel's stars, their colonel's birds in our military, or their stars of their general stars. They would strip this stuff off and lay bare, demonstrating to the people that I, as the victor, have the power and the authority to destroy from them their authority, to take it from them, and now it's mine. That's when he went into the earth and he was buried, right? He physically went into the earth and he stripped these principalities and these authorities of that power, of that dominion that they had up until that point. He took it back. And then it says he led with him a host of men, the first fruits, like this incredible shaking of the tombs and the dead waking up, that first fruits that were given to the Messiah on to Yahuwah, on the Feast of First Fruits, like beautiful fulfillment of the feast. That bringing to life was a demonstration of his triumph over death. That was like a physical witness to the fact that he now had power over it. His physical body showing up when he was coming back to his apostles and being like, listen, I live. Come and see. I'm alive. He's heralding it around. He's walking around in victory. That mindset and understanding, that authority is what he is promising to give to us. If you go to Matthew 16. This was a moment while Yeshua was alive on the physical earth, walking around before that moment. And he went to a place called Caesarea Philippi. Let's see. Caesarea Philippi, verse 13, chapter 16. Now when Yeshua came into the parts of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his taught ones, saying, who do men say the son of Adam is? Now pause for a second. This area, just so you know, is literally at the gates of Pan, the temple of Pan. This is like the satyr, half god, or half goat, half man deity that people would worship in these fertility rituals in the earth. And there was a physical cave that people went into. They believed it was the underworld, inky waters to the underworld that they could cross over through. That spot is literally the area where he's having this showdown. He went up to Mount Hermon and he transformed himself. He became brilliant and shone with this like white, brilliant light. He was demonstrating who he was before James and John and Peter, this like powerful revelation of who he was and his identity to them. That moment, he's coming down off of the mountain, and then they're having this conversation about his identity, okay? He said, "Who do men say that I am?" And Shimon Kepha answering said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim." And Yeshua answering said to him, "Blessed are you, Shimon Bar Yonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in the heavens. And I also say to you that you are Kepha, and on this rock I shall build my assembly, and the gates of Sheol shall not overcome it. And I shall give you the keys of the reign of the heavens. And whatever you bind on this earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on this earth shall be loosed in heaven." Then he warned his taught ones that no one should say that he is, that they should say to no one that he is who he is, Yeshua the Messiah. That little commandment, he said, listen, he's going to build up on this declarative statement. He's going to build up the assembly, right? We talk about the word church is what our modern word is for it, right? But this started, the Gahal started in the Old Testament. It started way before this at Sinai. His called out ones, people that are called out from the masses of those that are living the normal worldly way, those that are called out. He's literally saying, I'm going to demonstrate and give you this authority so that what you bind on this earth is bound on earth, and what you bind in the heavens is bound in heaven. He's giving you the authority over these spiritual forces that are waging war against the hearts and the souls of mankind. That is the keys of the authority that he's entrusting to those that are calling upon him, that are walking in his ways. So when you have encounters with people who are suffering from this affliction, you do not need to go and find the deliverance minister. You don't need to go find the authority in that. You are supposed to be the one carrying that authority. You are supposed to be the one understanding that cloak of righteousness, that armor that you wear, that power that he had lives in you. And when you walk in faith of believing that and understanding that, he will demonstrate for you with acts of wonders his providence of protection and provision for you to live that out. He was like, literally, greater works am I doing here. You are going to do greater works than I'm doing. You will cast out demons. You will raise the dead. You will literally cure the sick. These signs are supposed to be what follow us as demonstration of whose we are and our identity, of identifiable characters in the play to others. We are the compulsory schooling system that most of us inherited. One of the fatal, intentionally designed tactics that's built into it is a desire to not know what to do for yourself, is an inability to understand what to do for yourself, the inability to make decisions without an appeal to an authority. That there has to be some kind of expert person who is certified. There has to be somebody who is verified to be the source that I can go to ask this question to. That's deeply conditioned into us through the course of learned helplessness. That very intentional design feature of like sitting in a classroom in an uncomfortable seat. Physically being in pain makes it very difficult for someone to learn. Just that single feature of it, why they built into this system, sit in a chair that's uncomfortable for long periods of time and learn things that you're not interested in. That's creating in you a disdain for learning. By the time I got out of school, I didn't want to be in school ever again. And on one side of it, that's horrible because it took away schooling. Yes, being away from schooling is incredibly beneficial, but being away from education, being away from learning is detrimental, and it creates in you an inability to ever get out of the class system, whatever system of mental bondage, mental reasoning you're stuck at. It locks you in at that, and that's what's through designed what's called the artificial extension of adolescence. These are literally like, you can read firsthand source books on what the schooling system was designed to produce, and one of the goals of that system was to ever so slowly increase the age at which we created this newfangled term called adolescence, where people used to go from baby, infant, newborn, to infant, to toddler, right, to young child, to, as they would mature though, there would be this phase where child would end, generally almost always between the ages of 9 and 12 years old. That season of looking at somebody as a child was over. Cross-culturally, for thousands of years, that's been the way society has operated successfully, where children are then transitioned to young adults, young men and young women, and they're treated very differently with responsibilities, major responsibilities, and the ability to learn anything they want can be impressed upon them. What was created was this idea of adolescence, that there's this intermediate zone where before you're an adult, you're an adolescent. And this idea and this concept got so intentionally built into people's minds that it extended that from 12 to 14 years old in the late 1800s, in the early 1900s. And at the same time, what they did is they began to enact child labor laws so that it was illegal for children, young men and young women, to be working. And they did that through that weaponization of much of the media, much of the press, and much of the intelligentsia, so that people would look at children in horrible conditions doing work as a bad thing. And instead, we needed to get those children out of that place of work, of labor, of trades and crafts. We need them out of that, and we need them in these safe places called schools. That transition was extending adolescence so that they could have them in the schooling system as long as possible, to where now they've modified it to where adolescence is palatably socially accepted to people in their 20s, even people in their 30s, where they're still acting like children. They're still acting like children developmentally, even with reasoning and logic, still so dependent on others to tell them what to do that they're incapable of making decisions for themselves. And so what is created, though, within the body of Messiah, too, is a lot of believers who have a mentality that they're not autonomous, that they're not capable of making decisions through informed consent for themselves and being able to study the Word and know the Word and learn the Word or be comfortable with the Word to speak to other people on it. But it's easier to go back into that mindset of somebody else's job. I got to find somebody else whose expertise is that. Some of the best deliverance ministers out there, understand, that was never the job they signed up for. That was never the thing they wanted to do. But it came knocking down their door. And instead of looking for somebody else to be the source of the answer, they understood that they could take the same word and try to contend against that darkness. And I'm encouraging each and every one of you, this book is alive. And when you put it into you, it changes you and alters you and it nourishes you in a way that makes you able to respond when these things come kicking down people's doors, when this darkness comes to invade the land. But when we carry the boldness of the truth and the light, when we carry the light with us, we are able to walk in that authority that he gave us so that that darkness does not have a place in us. And others know that there's freedom there. First John, the book of 1 John. What was from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have looked upon and our hands have handled, concerning the word of life. And the life was manifested, and we have seen and bear witness and announced to you that everlasting life, which was with the Father and was manifested to us. We announce to you what we have seen and heard, so that you too might have fellowship with us. And truly our fellowship is with the Father and his Son, Yeshua Messiah. And we write this to you in order that your joy might be complete. And this is the message which we have heard from him and announced to you, that Elohim is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and are not doing the truth. But if we walk in the light, as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Yeshua Messiah, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. If we say we have no sin, we are misleading ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, he's trustworthy and righteous to forgive us the sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. If we say that we have not sinned, we make him a liar, and his word is not in us. My little children, I write this to you so that you do not sin. If anyone sins, we have an intercessor with the Father, Yeshua Messiah, a righteous one. And he himself is an atoning offering for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for all the world. And by this we know that we know him, if we guard his commands. The one who says, I know him, and does not guard his commands, is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever guards his word, Truly, the love of Elohim has been perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. The one who says he stays in him ought to also himself walk as he walked. Beloved, I write you no fresh command, but an old command which you have had from the beginning. The old command is the word which you've heard from the beginning. Again, I write you a fresh command which is true in him and in you, because the darkness is passing away and the true light now shines. The one who says he is in the light and hates his brother is in the darkness until now. But the one who loves his brother stays in the light, and there's no stumbling block in him. But the one who hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness, and does not know where he is going, because the darkness has blinded his eyes. I write to you, little children, because your sins have been forgiven on account of his name. I write to you, fathers, because you've known him from the beginning. I write to you, young men, because you've overcome the wicked one. I write to you, little children, because you have known the Father. I wrote to you, fathers, because you've known him from the beginning. I wrote to you, young men, because you are strong, and the word of Elohim stays in you, and you have overcome the wicked one. Do not love the world, nor that which is in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Because all that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but it is of the world. The world passes away, and the lust of it. But the one doing the desire of Elohim remains forever. Be of good cheer, my friends, my family that are out there right now. Understand that the love that he has for us and the love that we can have for each other will supersede and supersaturate that enemy, that darkness, that unperceivable lack that so many are plagued with today. We are supposed to be the ones to administer life to those that are dying. And you know what? When we take this word into us, it gives us the freedom to walk in that. It gives us the courage to go into those places of the unknowns. And it allows us to face the tomorrows with confidence of knowing that he holds our future in his hand. So I pray you guys would be strengthened and encouraged out there, and that you would not lose heart or grow tired of doing what is good, but to steadfastly pursue his ways and to be willing to survive and overcome amidst persecution. It's for our good, always. To my brothers abroad and sisters abroad, those of you guys that are over in Africa and New England and Europe and all the lands of the old world, hey, y'all, be encouraged. Be zealous always. Rejoice, all my brothers and sisters out there. Again, I say rejoice. I love you all. Thank you guys for your support and your encouragement. Even amidst all of the tumultuousness and the crazy torpidity of our life, y'all have been incredibly steadfast. Thank you for your prayers. We are doing well. The Father has been good to us and in providing so many ways. And you know what? We're watching him restore so much of what's been taken from the lives of many. So be zealous out there always. Be diligent and stay vigilant. I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon.